guys, Neil, one of the tutors at Tokoroa, usually based at the Waipa campus. So as I've discussed today, we're going to be talking about dangerous goods in our everyday lives. As I've already explained to you, this is part of my assessment process, so it's been recorded this morning, just so you're aware of that. So just a quick bit of housekeeping. This first session is going to last about 30 minutes, and then we'll stop and have a quick smoko. Toilets are just outside that door, just up the corridor to the right. In the unlikely event of an emergency, it's through that door, out the door at the back, and on meeting points by the fence. If you could just put your cell phones on silent, please. If anyone is expecting an urgent call, then just go outside and take it. So, what do we already know about dangerous goods? So, petrol, for example. What do we know about petrol? We use it in our cars, don't we? We use it to get here today. It's still a dangerous goods. What other things do we use? Laptop, battery. So what things have we got in our cupboards at home that may be classed as dangerous goods? So Sarah? Think of something you've got maybe...
Like spray and wipe.
Fly spray.
Yeah.
Yeah, fly spray.
Oven cleaner.
Yeah, oven cleaner.
Bleach.
Yeah. So although they're dangerous, we still use them in our everyday lives. So we already know a little bit about dangerous goods right from the start. So just before we kick off with the presentation, just like two groups of two, just to come down to the table, or you can work together, it doesn't matter. But we've got a selection of printed out photographs on here. And what you want you to do, and you do it in your group of four if you want, it's easier. So what I want you to do is just to decide whether it's a dangerous goods, you're not sure, or it's definitely not. So just come down, grab the photos, we'll just spend 5 minutes, and then we'll just need somebody just to come up afterwards and just write on the board which is which. So just come down and grab these, and then just work out which you think is definitely dangerous, what you're not sure about, and what is definitely not.
We'll do it two at a time. Or?
Yeah, just work on it together if you want.
It would be dangerous.
So if you just want to sit at your table and just discuss them just quickly, and then once you've decided, so it's a group activity, so just a little bit of discussion.
Discuss over here or?
Wherever, as long as there's just a quick...
Discuss there about the... Oh, yes, we did too.
That'll be dangerous, right? Is it?
That's dangerous if you drink it.
That would be dangerous.
No, it's dangerous if you drink it.
So if you're just thinking why it's dangerous, you know, what's the reason it might be dangerous?
Probably because that is an aerosol.
What it says.
Is this a dye or is this just an instruction on how to dye?
That's a hair dye that you colour
That
your
is a
hair
dye.
with. Yeah.
Is that a nippy?
That would be, yeah, that is.
That's dangerous.
Yeah. I say this is because you got to drink it.
What's that? Oh yeah, no.
This is because you're not going white.
Batteries.
Perfume.
Triple A. Gas. Flammable.
Perfume is.
Lithium, so yeah.
Perfume would be, wouldn't it?
Acid.
Makes you think though, eh?
Acid.
That's what's for you. What's like, what's in colour? Because they will have, I don't know.
Six. Nah, that's a hard one.
So start putting them into your 3 piles, and then just have a think what makes it dangerous or what doesn't make it dangerous.
It's a,
Well, that would if you have lots of alcohol.
you would know.
Alcohol, wouldn't it? It would be dangerous, wouldn't it? Like I'm meaning flammable ones? Yeah.
Well, see, well, it's another question, isn't
Yeah.
it? Like alcohol, like spirits would be, but then beer
That's
wouldn't be,
wine.
and wine's in the middle, you know,
Yeah.
so.
These are both batteries.
I don't know about
What about pet food? Definitely not, eh?
Nah,
It's just food.
that'll be down to bananas, eh?
So is the nuts, is it? Is it, do you reckon this one would be?
That'll be food, won't that?
I'd say maybe of that.
That definitely would not be it.
No, that's food, yeah. Definitely
What
not.
about paint in there?
Chemical,
Yeah, the liquid.
Poisonous.
yeah, poisonous, like that go. Probably.
Okay, so we got the piles together?
Yep.
Right, so you, my friend, if you want to bring up the ones that you think are definitely.
Oh!
So, if you could write here the things that are definitely dangerous, just yeah, I've got a pen here. So just write the name of what they are.
So we've got butane, is
Yeah,
it?
butane.
Butane, lithium batteries.
Nappy, is that dangerous?
Yep, yep.
Is it?
Yep. Right, look at here, mate. Look on
There
there.
we go. If you can just. So if we can just write them on the board, and then we'll discuss quickly a little bit about each one.
Infectious.
Oh, that's right, yeah. Infectious.
That's cool. Makes you think.
But
It's
that's
amazing.
dangerous good.
So then if we can have somebody else just to put up the maybes. Thank you.
That's what these are.
Oh, those ones.
Wine.
These were our maybes, eh?
Yeah.
And
Windscreen.
humble. Windscreen wash. Yeah, so that'd be detergent there.
And then if you just want to write up the ones that you say definitely not.
Well, that's got to be a maybe too, doesn't it? Because you don't know whether that's water-based paint or, you know?
Well done. Great stuff, thank you. Some interesting thoughts there, guys. So not DG donuts, yeah, definitely not. Might not be too healthy, but definitely not. Dog food, definitely not. So on to the maybes. Why do we think paints? Maybe.
Your tube space and your water-based, you know, if it could be class 3.
Actually, Dulux paint, UN 1266, definitely a dangerous goods.
Oh.
Windscreen wash. Got glycerol, alcohol in it. Dangerous goods. Difference with the windscreen wash is you can carry it in limited quantities. So if you ever go around to a service station and have a look, if you see the packaging it came in, it'll be a grey packaging with a black and white diamond on it. So it is a dangerous goods, but it can be carried in limited quantities. Wine, no. No, it's not pure alcohol. Lemonade, no. Nappies, clean nappy, not dangerous goods. As soon as it becomes dirty, it becomes a dangerous goods because it's an infectious substance. So again, it's confusing. So to transport clean nappies, don't need DG. Transport dirty ones do need a DG. Battery, yeah, car battery definitely. Lithium batteries, 3083 definitely. Lithium battery nearly brought a Qantas A380 down a few years ago because the lithium battery exploded in the cargo hold. Butane, yeah, definitely class 3 flammable. So yeah, really good exercise. It just shows you that something is dangerous one way, but not another. So a classic example is like deodorant cans, spray deodorants in the morning. You can transport it in limited quantities. Throw it away in rubbish and it becomes a different thing, because you have to have it because it needs to be kept in a container that vents and stuff. So no, good effort. So when it comes to dangerous goods, can we do what we want? No, unfortunately we have some legislation. So for us as drivers, there's a piece of legislation that covers the carriage of dangerous goods. So if anyone's heard of it before, it's the Land Transport Rule, the Dangerous Goods 2005, and Dangerous Goods Amended Rule 2016, Rule 45001/4. So basically that's what tells you how to carry dangerous goods within New Zealand. Now, one thing to say about dangerous goods is the UN numbers that you get is a United Nations number. That UN number is the same anywhere you go in the world. So if you pick up a lithium battery in America, it could be UN 3083. If you go to the UK, India, it could always be UN 3083. And also, we'll cover it off later, but it always has to be in English as well. And if it's not in English, it has to have a translation. So we're going to talk about three scopes of the rule. So anything that's listed in Table A basically is a dangerous goods. So the first question I have is, what's Table A? Well, Table A, and don't worry, you've not got to learn all these. Table A is anything, and you can just have a quick look through this if you want, anything located in here. So that covers literally hundreds upon thousands of products. So anything listed in there is by definition dangerous goods. If it's not in there, anything that the relevant authorities say is. So it does vary a little bit from country to country. And the other part of it is empty containers. So if you've got a petrol tanker that's delivered its 40,000 litres of fuel and it's empty, it's still classed as dangerous goods until it's been cleaned. And it doesn't mean cleaned as in we've chucked a hose through it. It will get a proper cleaning and then certification afterwards. So anything that's not got a certificate is still classed as dangerous goods. So just as I've just said, anything that basically has been cleaned but hasn't got documentation, it's still dangerous goods. So basically there's 10 sections of the rule. We'll just go over a couple of these because they're not overly relevant. The main ones for us as drivers is the nature, the quantity and the use of the goods. The packaging, we need to be able to identify what we're picking up as drivers. So the labelling and the marking, the documentation, which we legally have to carry. So segregation, definitely, unless somebody's loaded it for us, the segregation, we might pick up, a pallet of something here and then something somewhere else, so we need to make sure it's segregated. The placarding on our truck, and then just the general responsibilities. So they're the main sections as drivers that we need to be paying attention to. So before we can carry dangerous goods in significant quantities, we need to have a D endorsement on our licence. So in New Zealand, the people responsible are the New Zealand Transport Agency, and they're responsible for issuing your D endorsement. So just be careful, because what will happen is Simon will issue a certificate. You go to VTNZ, for example, to have it put on, but they don't actually issue it. The actual issuing comes from New Zealand Transport Agency. So broadly speaking, there's 9 classes of dangerous goods. So just quickly, we've got explosives, gases, flammable liquids. So butane, for example, flammable liquid. So you've got your flammable solids. You've got your oxidizing substances and peroxides, so things like hair dye. So toxic and infectious substances, dirty nappy. So radioactive, When you go to the dentist, for example, if you ever takes an X-ray, where does the dentist stand?
In another room.
In the other room, because when you're having an X-ray, that emits radiation, which just to you yourself isn't necessarily bad, but you get exposed to that on a regular basis, and then it can be a problem. So corrosive substances, things like battery acid. So corrosive substances works out by basically how quick it burns the skin down to the bone, and that will work out what section of corrosive substances that fits into. And then class 9 is basically anything that's dangerous, but it's more that you can't put it into another one of the groups. So things like diesel, it's not flammable, but it will kill all the plant life and marine life. So diesel's a class 9 dangerous goods. So it just fits into that category because it actually kills the environment. So just to complicate it, certain classes have what they call subdivisions. So class 1, that has classes 1.1, 1.2, etc. And these relate to the different properties the explosives have. So basically how quick they explode. So class 2, gases, that covers flammable gas, non-flammable, non-toxic gas and toxic gas. So things like if you go in an ambulance will have non-flammable, non-toxic gas. It'll give it you to breathe if you're in pain. So class 4, again 3 divisions, flammable solids, things that combust all by themselves. So things like oily rags, they generate heat until the point that they ignite. And then you've got the 4.3 dangerous when wet. So class 5 has 2, class 6 has 2. So the main difference in class 6 is something that's toxic and then something that's infectious. So toxic, something we breathe in or ingest, so like poison for example, that's toxic. Whereas the infectious substance is something like the dirty napper. Explosive, self-explanatory, it's basically something that happens when you fire something or blow something up. So not only is it the explosive that can damage, but also the shock wave, which is the pressure that the explosion happens. So just some examples, fireworks, seatbelt tensioners, airbag inflators. That's why if you ever come across a crashed car and the airbags haven't go off, be very careful about going in because they can suddenly go off. So the gases, as we just said, got different types of gases. So some are liquefied, some are not, some are deeply refrigerated. So class 2.1, flammable gas, things like acetylene, LPG. As we mentioned, in the ambulance, we've got the oxygen. Toxic gas. So these are the more dangerous ones because it's the vapour, if you like, that kills you. So if, for example, you're constantly breathing it in, it can take over you without you knowing. So flammable liquids. So I think the most commonly known flammable liquid is probably petrol. That's all the basically things that we carry on a daily basis. So when they categorise them, they talk about flash points, and that just basically means that at the temperature which the vapour releasing can ignite, and then it gets split further down into what they call packing groups. So the packing group 1's like the highest danger, packing group 2's like medium, and packing group 3's like low risk. So as we said, petrol, jet fuel, terps. So class 4.1, these are solids, not liquids, but when we're transporting normally, they're readily combustible, and they may cause or contribute to fire through friction. So basically, if it rubs together, then it can cause it to to self-ignite. So things like sulfur, magnesium. Does anybody remember at school? I don't know if you had it in New Zealand, but you had a little magnesium strip, and if you burnt it, all of a sudden it ignited into a flash, bright light. Do you have magnesium? Yeah.
Yep. And sodium was the other one, I think. Eh?
And then things which are liable to self-heating under transport normal conditions, and when you get into the contact with air, the point they catch fire. So things like oily rags, when they're in the steel drum, they're just basically heating, and then all of a sudden take the lid off, they can combust. It's not a dangerous goods, but compost, if you put it on your garden, it's not hot, is it? You store compost together and it basically degrades and creates heat, and that's why if you ever touch compost when it's been stored, it's hot. So as mentioned, oily rags. Substances which become wet. So you've got a pallet of something and the forkheap drops it off the side into a puddle. It's fine until it gets wet, but then it becomes a problem once it gets wet, and then it could give off a gas. If you're standing in that gas, you can obviously become overcome. So calcium, sodium, lithium. I think there was, if you remember back to school, you could light like boil sodium and then watch it explode. Was that a thing in New Zealand? Yeah. So things that are not necessarily combustible, but they give off oxygen, which may basically help a fire. So if you chuck these on to a fire, it'll just make it worse, not better. So hairdressing peroxide. Well, if you think what it does to your hair, bleaches it, don't it? It burns it basically. So organic peroxides, they basically can blow up as they decompose. They burn very rapidly, they're very sensitive, react dangerously with other substances. So when you come on to think about load segregation, these will be the ones that you'll always put out first, because they were the ones that you won't be able to mix with other things so easily. So they can cause damage to eye or skin and produce toxic gases as they combust. So the main one that they say here is when you're repairing the car, you put on the filler and then you put in a hardener to make it go off. Well, this is what a 5.2 is. So it basically makes the what do you call it, the stuff go off to make it hard, so it doesn't.
Reaction.
Yeah. So as we said, things that you can swallow, so like bleach tablets. So cyanide, if anyone watches a Hollywood movie, cyanide's what they always put a little drop of in somebody's drink or dangle it down the throat, and they die within minutes. So we've probably all got some of these under our sink at home or in our cupboard. Some bleach. That's why they always put the childproof locks on to stop children taking it off and drinking. So infectious substances, so basically these are your waste, so your dirty nappies, sharps, things that you find at hospital, you know, dead things, dead animals, because basically they carry the disease. So if you ever decide to go and work on vehicle recovery, for example, you know, when you go out to an accident, nobody valets the car before you pick it up. So you always need to be really careful when you're delving into cars. It's not only the things that have come from the people, but also, you know, people are drug users, they might have needles, they might have to take insulin for medical reasons. So, you know, you start rummaging through an upside down car, you need to be careful what it is that you're touching. So again, as we said earlier, nappies are not dangerous when they're clean. They only become dangerous once they've been used. Same with your needles and things. It's only once you've used you like bandages, and when they're in the packets, they're not dangerous. They only become dangerous when basically somebody's had it wrapped around them. So radioactive, like we said, things that, like dentists, go for an x-ray. If you break something, the radiographer always stays in the other room. It's to prevent prolonged exposure over the years. So if anybody's ever seen the documentary Chernobyl in Russia, where the nuclear reactor broke down, well, basically all those people living in that area, they basically suffered prolonged horrific deaths because of the radioactivity that leaked out.
Some weird stuff happened too, eh?
Yeah.
There's little fish ended up being, yeah.
It's on Netflix actually. It's a really, really good series.
Oh, it's scary.
Is it a series or a movie?
No, it's a series. I think there might have been a movie as well, but basically,
Get it on Netflix, I think, but it's worth watching. Yeah.
because when that happened, it hadn't really happened before, so they didn't really know how to, do it.
Yeah. Have you seen that?
There's 2 or 3, is it?
No.
There's a
Something
few
like that, but
episodes.
it's well worth watching. It's just a complete mucker.
So anyway, if you see things being stored, I would imagine that might be a lead case, because that keeps the radioactivity inside. So corrosives, you can have a corrosive acid, you can have a corrosive alkali, but basically they measure it by how quick it burns through the skin down to the bone. So if ever you're moving a car battery, we always have gloves on. And the class 9, which is basically anything that doesn't sit well in any of the other classes. So diesel, probably the most commonly known class 9. But the reason for this is that it's not flammable, but it does kill the marine life. So just to summarise, as trainee drivers, just by looking at the labels, we now know how to recognise dangerous goods. We understand the 9 classes of dangerous goods. We understand now that even empty packaging can be dangerous. So our petrol can, we go and fill the bro's car, the vapour still stays in the thing and it can still ignite. And we can also now recognise that although goods are still dangerous, that it's perfectly okay to carry them in either accepted or limited quantities, which we'll obviously come on to as we get more into it. So just before we wrap this session up, is there any questions from you guys? No? So you see down the left-hand side there all the placards. I'm not so sure it'll work for New Zealand, but in the UK we used to remember it by football strips. So you'd always remember your class 4 was like Sunderland kit because it was red and white, and your blue would be Everton because they're blue and white. The miscellaneous Newcastle. So that was how the guys in the UK used to, the football mad ones used to remember it. So I don't know if you can apply any of them to your rugby jerseys or anything.
There's Canterbury and the Blues there, I suppose.
Just one question,
Yeah.
Neil. When you talk about nappies and when it gets dirty, it's a dangerous goods. Would that class as with like clothes and that as well?
With clothes?
Yeah. What's the difference between clothes and
It'd have to be
nappy?
infectious.
Yeah, so again, if you put one nappy in your dustbin, it's not a dangerous goods.
Yeah.
But if you put 30 in a wheelie bin and get a guy to come and collect it, it then becomes a dangerous goods.
Oh, okay.
So clothes, just normal clothes, no. But say, I don't know, without being horrific, somebody performed something on you on the side of the road and they cut your clothes and off it was soaked in blood, then
Potentially,
yeah, that potentially would be a dangerous goods. And that's why when people come to collect it, they should bag it up properly.
Yeah.
So like all the needles and stuff, the ambulance crews, they should take them back and then put them in a shop, spin and stuff when they get back.
Okay.
But you know, again, at the side of the road in pitch black, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah.
you don't always know.
Good question, because it's interpretation, eh?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
we talk about the medical stuff. I knew a guy that used to do some of that dumping of that stuff, and they used to dump the scalpels, like stainless scalpels made of high quality, you know, knife steel, and they dump them because they deemed them to be infectious. All they needed was clean. Another one is asbestos, when they take down a building at TR that they pulled down in Wellington. In fact, and all it was workshop. So guys had all their spanners and tools, threw them away. Well, they just needed to clean, you know, so it's interpretation of it, so it gets a bit clouded.
But yeah, I mean, asbestos is a killer. It's been proven to kill people over the years. When I did a 6-month temporary contract at Waste Management, they found a piece of asbestos no bigger than that, and they shut the whole place down for 3 days while they came in and made sure they took it all away, because you know it does kill people. So just out of interest, this other book, so that one tells you all the products, this one tells you how you can carry it. So what they're assuming is when the product that you're picking up as drivers is out on the pallet, it's in either the correct packaging, correct box, correct waste safe. So for example, if you were picking up a load of used deodorant cans, it should be in the correct packaging when you pick it up. So that becomes on the responsibility of the loader or the person sending the product. But as drivers, we need to make sure that our part of it is done. Okay, any other questions? No? Cool. Well, thanks guys. We'll conclude this quick session now. We'll have a quick 5-minute smoke out and then we'll get on with something else.
Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, Neil.
Thank you.